Welcome to Neurodivergent Pulse, where we explore the often misunderstood world of neurodivergence with experts, parents, teachers, and therapists. Grounded in lived experience, each bite-sized episode gives you something practical to try. I am your host, Laetitia, AI expert, neurodivergent mom and founder of Understanding Zoe. This podcast is recorded on Daryl country. I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Hello, Christina. Thank you so much for joining the Neurodivergent Pulse podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to spend time together and just take time to have a chat. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, and in a topic that I think is very funny for a podcast, we're talking about beyond words, and we're using words for this interview. But I really resonated with lots of the messages you shared during the Yellow Ladybug conference and your content online. So I'm very grateful that we can have you on the Neurodivergent Pulse podcast for you to share your brilliance with more listeners.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's just fantastic. Just behind me, actually, and I know the listeners can't see it, but you can. I have a framed piece of artwork that someone did as they're listening to my story at the Yellow Ladybugs conference. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like this is just beautiful. Like it's just, it's almost hard to put into words because it's art and it's So I have that, in the center back behind me just to be able to remind myself. And it was such a gift to have. And it's a treasure. Yeah.
It definitely is when you see your work being put into art and then the deep connection that it creates.
And that's communication right there, right? That is how someone received my story and the message of my story and their interpretation, and that's their expression of it. And I think that really highlights celebrating, recognizing, honoring all forms of communication. And there is no hierarchy. Speech isn't at the top. We're not aiming for that. And I think even speech pathologists who specialize, like that's their thing is supporting people with communication. Well, it needs to be broadly supporting communication and all the differences, the beautiful differences that come with it. And yeah, sure, I've caught myself at times, and I've read from other species too, that they had a big reaction to their client when their client who maybe mostly non-speaking or minimally speaking, and then they use a word like, oh yeah, there we go. And the reflection part of it, reflecting back is, oh, I've actually communicated to my client that their oral language, their spoken word is what's valued more than everything else that they've communicated with me. So yeah, I love that I have that someone gifted that to me, that their communication, like it's that feedback, it's that reciprocation of this is what I took. And it's just really lovely.
My gosh, I love everything you said, and we're getting straight into it actually, because through what you said, you're sharing the power of the communication beyond words, beyond the spoken words. So for any listeners who may be early on their journey and they have a non-speaking member in their family, whether it's their kids or their partner or themselves, what kind of communication are we talking about beyond words? So we talk about art here, but What are the other things that can help us communicate as human and we need to value as much as a spoken word? I would love for you to share that with us.
Yeah. Well, I suppose like I'm definitely gonna get there, but then I'm thinking I've done like the ADHD or thing where I've just jumped to something else, and no shame at all, because that's the way my neurology, that is what my brain wanted to do. So I let it do it. But for the listeners, I'm gonna introduce myself so you get to know a little who I am. And who I am, there's so much to me. And I love that I'm really honoring that about myself now, and I'm not minimalizing it, and that I'm still discovering, everything that there is to me. But yeah, there's a lot to me, right? But from, I suppose, and I bring a lot of lived experience into what I do. The professional side of me and what people see on my social media publicly is that I'm a speech therapist, and included in that is also I'm an educator. I recognize now that I'm a storyteller, and I'm an advocate as well. And I am the person behind, I run Free to Be Me Speech Therapy here in Naarm, which is the traditional name for Melbourne in Australia. And Free to Be Me, it really is however you'd like to interpret it. For me, I needed to get away from the exploitation of employment and really not putting limits on myself, because I felt so limited. I wanted I wanted to be free to be me, and the people that I have the honor of joining their communication journey and supporting them, I want them to feel free to be themselves, whatever that looks like for them. So with my practice, I really uphold neurodiversity affirming practice and care, as well as cultural responsiveness. And that means that I support people to communicate in the ways that they feel most authentic, whatever that might look for them at any given time, and that feels accessible to them as well. And we explore a lot of that together, whether that's my clients who are children or my clients who are adults or anywhere in between. At any age, that's what we can do together. And what inspired this work is partly my own story. Again, I'm bringing, clinical experience, but also my living experience into what I do, because I'm neurodivergent. I'm an AuDHD, I'm autistic, and I'm an ADHD, and I'm a Black woman. So I have a lot of intersectionality that makes up who I am. That is a part of my identity. So I can't separate those things, and including in what I do for a living. So communication has always, for me, been more than just words. It's beyond that. It's really like the movement. It's our energy. It's our rhythm. It's our expression. That's it's human. So it's the way that we connect before language even arrives for us. And it never really, perhaps needs to. That's what it's about. So I have a lot of passion, and my passion grew, and it still grows from wanting to help people, wanting to help others. And especially, I've always had a calling towards like children and families, because I want everyone to be able to feel seen. I want them to feel understood. I want them to feel free to express themselves in all the ways that communication can show up. So yeah, being someone that has multiply marginalized, feeling, knowing, being seen and heard is huge for me. So yeah, I want to reflect that in the work that I do and how I support the people that I get to work with. So yeah, going back to beyond words. What does that mean, and what does that look like? I think there's a lot of nuance to it. I'm a person that, like, sometimes a part of my brain wants it to be, like, really explicit and
Yeah.
really, like, matter of fact and just tell me the things. But I also know that reality doesn't all it's not always like that. It's not always so neat fitting as my brain wants it to be. But also the ADHD side of me is like, oh, come on, let's open up and allow for spontaneity and all of that. So yeah, nuance belongs there too. So we're really talking about, yeah, like a full spectrum of communication. Here we are again, like another spectrum, and communication has that too. And yeah, beyond words, what this might look like is gestures. It might look like body movement and expression through that. Um, Facial expressions or even lack of facial expressions can, that's included. AAC, which is short for augmentative and alternative communication. Movement, I've mentioned before, stimming, sound, scripting, typing, writing, drawing, art, videos, like even like video clips, like sharing video clips and memes, and
Yeah.
even silence. Like I always like to highlight that silence is, a part of our communication too. Just sitting and or standing and or moving and being, with others is also a form of communication and can be super powerful. So let's not, forget that. So it's really important because communication is our connection, and connection doesn't always come out as like oral speech, right? Like that's not there's no hierarchy with this. When we recognize communication in its many forms, we're saying to others that I see you and I'm listening, even if you're not speaking. I see you and I hear you. I feel you. Like, I what you have to say and what you communicate is important.
Truly is. Thank you, Christina, for all of this, for introducing yourself, for sharing how you created Free to Be Me and the intention, and also sharing with us other ways to see communication being expressed beyond words. And something that I find very interesting as I was listening to you is I was trained to be a spokesperson when I was in a big corporate, in a role where, of course, I was leading AI and big data. At the time, it was 10 years ago, and during 7 years, I did that. And it was like, oh, you will need to speak on stage, because being a woman in AI at the time was like, wow,
Yeah.
nothing. Also, very often tokenism was happening, as we see tokenism happening a lot also in the neurodivergent space. But don't want to go down that path, but I'm trying to teach my brain we stay on the topic. But when I was trained for that, they were saying that actually 55% of the communication when you're on stage is your body language. So even when you are on stage speaking, sharing a message as a speaker, your body language is 55% of what people will retain. Then there is the tone of voice, and then there are the words and the message and so on. But actually the most important is your body language and the silence. Exactly what you said, having those moments of silence. So even as keynote speaker, as spokesperson and so on, we are trained on honoring silence and using your body to communicate effectively a message in spoken words. So I think we need to really change that approach, which is speech is at the top of the pyramid, because even though, of course, in your work, and that's why you're here, it is not at the top of the pyramid. How many times have I heard someone telling me, what are the words that they used? What are, what spoken words did they use today? Please express yourself, but it's not express yourself with your body, or
Yeah.
through art or through typing or writing. It's express yourself, like use your words. How many times have we heard that? Even
Yeah.
last week when I was on holiday, a little boy was having a meltdown and his mom was just pushing him, being like, what's happening? Use your words. And I was like, he's having a meltdown.
I
How?
literally heard that same thing yesterday for a client who, yeah, became dysregulated and, and quickly and flight mode happened, ran away. And a school staff member saw, I was walking and I saw where he was and I was making sure to give him his space and his time because he's not wanting someone to just crowd his space. And yeah, the school staff member said, "Oh, use your words. You have such beautiful words." And I'm like, mm. We were walking away after we were able to, yeah, support like co-regulation. And I said, I know that words can be hard to use, when you're having, like when your battery is low, right? When it's been drained, so it's a big drain. And the really beautiful thing that happened is the school staff member said, "Oh, yeah, that's right. And I'm sorry that I pressured you," which was so awesome. It was
Yeah.
so awesome that that was able to happen and immediately. So, yeah, interestingly, the 55%, I, I, my interpretation and my wondering is that that probably is for like maybe a majority, and possibly, yeah. I just wonder if that's like, who did they get that percentage from? Like
I'm
who
pretty sure, yeah, pretty sure
who
it's neurotypical. Yeah, it's
yeah,
neuro.
who the sample size was. Because I'm thinking, well, I know, and here are like, people that belong, in the margins and the nuances here is that there are people with dyspraxia and their body might move in a way that they're not wanting to, but it doesn't mean that they're, perhaps communicating, something that, yeah, like if that their body language might move differently to what they're actually wanting to communicate, or for some people they're not able to use their body to directly communicate. And so yeah, so I'm like, oh, that 55%, I wonder what sample size, who were included in that sample size.
I'm pretty sure it's mostly neurotypical and, as I said, neuronormative norm, but it's really interesting to see that even in that space,
Yeah.
the spoken word are actually a lower percentage than anything else. I don't remember the exact number, but I think the spoken words are only like 5% from memory,
Mhm.
or 10%. So what you say is actually not as important as the other elements in your presentation. So, but yeah, definitely we need to have a sample that is including intersectionality, neurodivergent folks, and making sure that we are, yeah, considering this as well. I love
Yeah,
you.
of course.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
important. Definitely, I was not trained with neurodivergent folks
I
in that
didn't
way.
think so, but I'm also like, oh, I wonder. I wonder.
Love it. So as we were talking about teachers, and some of them may be listening, or even parents, what are some of the practical ways that they can encourage or validate different form of communication at home and in the classroom to especially avoid what we're talking about? Yes, you said this word. Like, how many times have I seen on TikTok or Instagram, some people were like, or on Reddit, oh, my son or my daughter, or they use their first words, they express this, and you're like, but they were communicating before. So how can we help them? What are some practical ways that you'd like to share with them, whether it's parents, teacher, or therapists who are on their journey to be affirming and supporting other ways of communication for them to do that?
Yeah, I think it's it's challenging, I suppose, like societal norms and assumptions, the value that's placed on speech. Um And look, I do want to be able to, I don't want to take away the excitement that people experience when, like their loved one, like, a child uses, a first word, or, because that's their feeling to own. And also, there are also people and their children are non-speaking, so they're not going to hear that, and there can be some grief there. And in addition to that, they're understanding and getting to know, all of the other very valid forms of communication that their child does as well. So, yeah, I think what ends up happening, like, it's one of those myths, communication myths, that speech is gets equated to intelligence. So, if someone's speaking, then that, yeah, like, and also like the ableism that's there as well. So you can speak like you're able to do X, Y, and Z, but that's simply not true. And the ways that I listed before, in which, you know, other, all the valid forms of communication, including gestures and the body language and the silence, and having and using augmentative and alternative means of communication. um it shows that all communication counts.
Yeah.
And that expression, it's how that person best is able to express themselves, if that's movement, if that's sound that they make. So yeah, I suppose, what ways can parents and educators uplift the other ways of communicating, and even being aware and acknowledging, like the insight into knowing that, oh, okay, like, this is different to what I know, but that's okay. And it's probably addressing their own internal biases about communication
Yeah.
first. Um, but I think it's, it's getting curious. It's even reflecting and asking yourself, how does this person who I'm supporting and wanting to continue to support as well as I can, how are they best, getting their message across now? Um, and that best can, differ and fluctuate, but, how are they doing that now? Is it through, body language? Are they turning away from me to indicate that they don't want to do something? Are they pushing something away? Because that's communicating as well. That's saying, and that's so powerful. It's saying that, that person doesn't want something, um, or, they're not liking something. And yeah, so yeah, getting curious and, taking time to reflect, and, working out, well, how can I, as a communication partner, continue to, um, let them know that the ways that they are communicating already are super valid, and that they're important, and that, I'm going to continue to support their communication no matter what. Um, yeah, and I think, sometimes, if the person feels, if it's comfortable for them, like, it can be even, like, mirroring their communication. And also knowing that, like, maybe not everything they do is meant to communicate with someone else, like maybe noises, or, gestalts, chunks of language that echolalia that they use. It may not always be for another person. Um, but yeah, sometimes even mirroring, kind of say, like, I see you, and I hear you, and like, I sense that, what you're saying to me is important, pausing, observing, um, yeah, trying. And, if that didn't work for that person, you can always repair it. And just like that full staff member saying, oh, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry I put that pressure on you. Because we can repair communication too, and that's what's a part of communication. It shows that person, hey, I want to do my best by you, and this is a learning process. It's reciprocal, and this is what it's all about. Yeah, I suppose that's what I can think of. Just slowing down, really. Slow down, tune in, get curious, reflect. It's the micro moments. It's the micro moments of communication when we're going fast and we don't see it. We don't realize it. So because it can be a quick glance. It could be that person's pausing. It could be a shift in their body, and they are telling us so much more than words ever could. So yeah, when we take that time and we allow ourselves to be curious, like I wonder, like asking that question to yourself, I wonder what it is that, they're communicating to me. So yeah.
I love it. I love how simple it sounds, and at the same time how it challenged the norms and the neural norms and this, go culture and answer straight away and, react quickly. When I was on an interview yesterday for media outlet, and I just said, I just need a minute, because of course they ask you a question which you haven't prepared, and to reply. And I was so proud of myself because of my own internalized abilism. I tend to just go. And then like, this is a tricky question. I want to answer it in a way that feels right. So I'm just going to ask for a pause and at myself. But it's, this norm that is put on all of us is sometimes making us forget that we may have different ways of expressing ourselves.
What I was thinking, well, firstly, go you, because as adults and, being later realized and later diagnosed, there is a lot of guilt and shame and internalized ableism that we're, needing to combat, like work out, figure out and unravel and all of that. So to honor the fact that, we need extra processing time, and to, make that clear, and to have been able to, advocate for yourself in that moment, and recognize and go, oh, wow, like I did it, and look how that really supported me. Because it's not always easy to do that. But it showcases that, even the delayed, communication due to needing that extra processing time, what you communicated was still, like valid. It's really, and there's that asynchronous communication as well, sometimes coming back to something that was spoken about 5 minutes before, or communicated 5 minutes before, because that's just the way, difference in brains, and that's just the way that it works, and it's still okay. So yeah, I think that's really, really awesome.
Thank you. And I love also what you said about synchronous communication, about my own autism. We knew about my ADHD since I'm little, but my parents decided not to tell me. It's a podcast in itself. But I had all the labels. They didn't. ADHD. But the autism came later. But it's something, the asynchronous communication piece. For a long time, I was replying a meeting. I was replying, even a podcast interview. And I was like, oh, this is what I wanted to say. But then the meeting is done. The podcast is recorded. The interview is finished. And something I did for this interview, I was like, can I read and sometimes some journalists don't want to do that, but some of them may do that, and always challenging for inclusion. And I was like, can I just read what you write and just give my feedback if anything needs editing? And I was like, because I'm autistic and sometimes I have a difference in processing information, and so I would love the opportunity if it's possible. And they said, yeah, so I will be able to read and align ourselves to edit. So again, it is self-advocacy and allowing all this. So I love that. But we are getting out of time. So I just want to, because my commitment to the community was, I'll promise I do it in 20, 30 minutes, which I'm struggling to do.
Oh, I know. It's the aim, but it can be tricky.
Very tricky. But I really want to ask you this question around the biggest barriers that you see, whether it's at school or in therapy or within the community, that limit access and understanding about communication happening beyond words. What are the main barriers? What are those misconceptions and elements that we need to change as advocate, change maker, or anyone who is joining this with an ally and listening to it and is like, okay, I can help with this.
Okay, before I do that, I'm gonna take my time. Like I know that you've got the 20 to 30 minutes for community, but as a Black autistic, ADHD person, I'm going to absolutely do the asynchronous communication right now. I'm honoring that about myself. I wanted to get back to just one thing for teachers, educators, people wondering, how do I support someone who communicates, differently to what I'm used to, which might be just spoken language, right? Like they're humming or they're using a quote from a favorite show. In addition to what I said before, like recognizing, acknowledging, and all of that, like expanding on it. Knowing like there's no need to correct it. And in addition to that, adding on that visual component, like supporting them with visuals, photos, language boards or core word boards, and even your body, like I said before, like mirroring their body movements. You can nod, you can pause and wait for them so they can process. But I think the biggest gift that you can give is to listen, and the multiple ways you can listen, like including with your heart, So yeah, I just wanted to add that in. The barriers, the accessibility, I'm getting back to that now. So yeah, the biggest barriers that I see are one, systemic, and another one probably attitudinal, like where the bias, our internal biases come from and kind of can dictate the way that we go about and we initially see things. Because that hierarchy, where speech, or the pyramid where speech is still sitting at the top, what ends up happening is that's filtered into school expectations and at times, still therapy goals, and even funding systems. So another thing is there is a lack of access to AAC, especially devices, getting them funded, the training, the representation, especially culturally, and linguistically diverse families and AAC users. There's just still a lack of access and support for it. And accessibility, it's not just about tools. It is also about the mindset and the inclusion and the equity. So we're wanting to make sure that every communicator has both the right tools and the right support people.
Yeah, I love that. So good. Oh my goodness. You know what? As we're going over, and this is my PDR, I'm like, why did I commit into that? I'm going to change the rule. I just really want to hear from you about your vision and passion for this. But if you had one message for professionals or maybe for policymakers about why communication diversity matters, what would it be?
That, and yes, you are totally allowed to change, and you're totally allowed to do that. Communication is a human right, not a privilege. So when we limit what air quotes counts as communication, we we silence people and we erase them, or we erase parts of them and their identity and who they are. But when we open up to communication diversity, what we're doing is we're calling in more empathy and creativity and understanding into our world. So if, really what I would love is, let's invest in training and representation and access, because with the inclusion, it doesn't happen through just awareness alone. Like, there's no action in that. It happens through action.
I could stay on this for hours. Like, there's so many bubble thoughts that came, to me. So I'm sure we'll have a full-on conversation for sure. And I can't wait to get a chance to meet you again in person. What is this one way or multiple way that you express yourself best beyond words? I always love to ask a personal question to our guests.
Yeah, okay. For me, through rhythm, creativity. So for me, it's like music and dance can be really big for me. Scripting, or having gestalts from songs and such. So I like to get in touch and maintain my creative side and my inner child always. Like, I make room for her. She has room now, and she didn't always. So, there's a freedom in that, that speech doesn't always hold. So there we go. So, yeah, even when I'm with a client, I will tell them, like, one of my clients said, "Oh, you're just so much fun. Like, you're not like other adults." And I'm like, "Well, because my inner child is always with me." So, we're moving around together, I'm humming along with them. And that's communication and action. It's happening. It's a way of me being able to say to them, I'm here, I'm feeling this, I'm connected. So yeah, that's yeah, I could go on and on. I'm gonna leave it there for now.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And how can people who are listening to this podcast, like, oh my gosh, Christina is magic, I'd love to connect more. How can they learn more about you, connect about your work? What are the best ways?
I love for people to connect with me. I love, for people to let me know, like, what resonates with them, or whatever it might be. So they can find me at Free to Be Me Speech Therapy, on multiple platforms: Instagram, Facebook, through my website. I have a newsletter now to subscribe to and keep up with the latest with me, because I'm usually now around the world presenting and on different podcasts, and I'm getting myself into all the things that interest me. There's no limits. So I have like resources. I've got a shop on my website. And in my newsletter, I'll share like reflections and affirming supports that honor all the ways of communication, and wherever else that might flow on to. Yeah, feel free to reach out and connect with me. I'd love that.
I love it. And you're such an approachable human. So I really appreciate you for everything you do for the community. And you're an amazing advocate. So thank you. Thank you for coming on the podcast today.
My pleasure. I appreciate you.
Welcome for a new Pearls from Zoe on on the Neurodivergent Pearls podcast. As you can hear, she's excited. So Zoe, what are your favorite ways to communicate when you don't want to speak?
I could send you messages, do hand movements, write, and scribble.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And I love when you find those ways to communicate your needs without having to speak if you don't feel like it. Because I do too have moments where I don't like talking, so I do the same. So how do you know that someone is really listening to you, even when you're not using words?
They would say more than just yes and no, and they would tell me.
They would tell you if they understood you? Yes? So she's nodding her head, which is also a beautiful way to communicate when you communicate with your body movement. And what helps you feel safe to share what's on your mind, whether it's with your body, with your hands, in writing, or with your words?
When I'm with my family and the ones that I love.
Oh, that's very cute. Thank you, Zoe, for joining us for your little pearls on the Neurodivergent Pearls podcast.
Yay!
That's a wrap for Neurodivergent Pearls. If this helped, follow the show and leave us a quick review on your favorite platform. You can even share this episode with someone who needs it. You can learn more about our platform at understandingzoe.com. Thanks for listening.